All right, hello everyone, and welcome to a review of a unit that this one might be a little bit. I don't know, the title feels a little bit baity since basically I called it "Does Squall Suck?" Yeah, the first 24 hours of Squall has been less than impressive in terms of showcases and whatnot. But does that really mean that Squall is a really bad unit and that people need to panic and get angry and frustrated about it? Well, let me tell you something, dear viewer. I am recording kind of in the middle of a lightning storm, which makes a really, I actually really like this just because it's like, hey, guess what? Squall is lightning. Go figure. Anyway, so let's take a look at this unit's kit. First off, we'll show off something that's just really cool, which is, of course, the nostalgia, this being with Final Fantasy VIII. This limit burst, in a ton of times, having played through Final Fantasy VIII a lot, and it's really cool to see it represented here. What is also just really funny about it is just the fact that, hey, look, 800,000 hits that only count as 4. But you know what? Balance does need to kind of be held a little bit, and I feel they've gone too far in the other direction. So yeah, I guess the first way to talk about, or the first thing we should probably do, is just take a look at the whole package here and what's going on. And then later on, I'm also going to talk about where lightning is as an element and why it's probably not such a big deal. So first off, let's start with the easy thing, which is the new VC, Feed VC, which is a 70 cost limited vision card that is basically a elemental vision card. 347 HP, 144 attack, 3 defense, and 28 dexterity. So it is more of a defensive card, but it still has generally pretty good offensive capabilities too. You're looking at 25% attack, you're looking at 10% attack on the bestowed effect, and acquired AP of 30%. Basically powers whatever unit has this to still be fairly offensive, while providing the entire party, providing their lightning units, a good amount of defense. Single target resistance and strike resistance, which, you know, single target resistance isn't the most common thing. And I'll say this much, strike resistance is very valuable with how strong Bridal Ally is. You know, something that we essentially need to factor into the review of Squall. Then you take a look at the Lionheart, which last I heard, I think Thancred is able to equip this, but not. Let's just look through. Guess not. Sad times for Mr. Thancred. So the condition here is that you're essentially looking at an increase of initial AP of 10, a critical hit rate of 15, and if a critical hit does happen, get a defense increase of 15. Now, this is all on top of just a general slash attack of 15. It is essentially Squall's sword, and there's almost no reason that any other unit would want this game. Only 172 attack on offense, and critical with a critical rate of 24 is something. But for the most part here, I mean, this sword, if you were wanting to go into a more defensive way, you should probably just focus on the critical, since it does quite increase the chance that you're going to be getting a constant defense buff on Squall. Although a one-turn buff, if you ever miss it, is going to be a field bad moment. As for aim, I don't think it's super important here, so let's just continue. And now that we've taken a look at the prerequisites for kind of what's coming with Squall, now we can better encapsulate essentially what you're looking at in the unit. So let's get started on that. Talking about Squall, he has 100 cost, 3 move, 1 jump, Thunder Elemental limited edition character, Seed as his main job, Trick Lancer, and Pugilist as his secondary and third jobs. Weapons, swords, hats, clothing, accessories, what you would expect. TMR, pretty good. 267 HP, 13 defense, and 10 critical rate are all perfect for Squall, but an increase of debuff resistance of 100 for 3 turns is actually a lot of fun here. Just because, like, in a purely physical-based match, killing your opponent's defense debuff is just really good, and you can get this on multiple characters, meaning that if there isn't magic, it does potentially put the enemy in a tough spot, and you're also getting haste. So this TMR is just straight really good, especially at a 28 TP cost. Now, master ability, reaction block rate of 20, AoE resistance of 10, dream ability, decrease AP consumption by 20%, and increase lightning attack. Now, this is all over the place. It's just a little bit of reaction block rate, it's a little bit of AoE resistance, it's a little AP consumption, and it's a little bit of lightning attack. And this is going to be the notes going forward into Squall's kit, is just this little bit of everything that makes him kind of good in a certain locations, but less than impressive. Now, because I don't have the friend unit, initial resistances 20, -10, 20, 10, and 5. So looking across the board here, yes, piercing is his big weak point, but I don't think that's really super relevant. Yeah, there are Earth Elemental Spear based characters, but that's probably not the match you were hoping to queue up into anyway. Here, the big takeaways is that he's generally good against Slash and generally good against Strike. 2 types of physical damage I think he'll have to deal with quite regularly. And as for shooting, that is also a net positive here. I really think this character is not someone that you're particularly trying to counter mages with. And if he does have one weak spot, Pierce isn't the worst. As for other things, stun resistance, blind resistance, and berserk resistance, which is all okay, but not overly impressive in any shape or form. Now, curiously, his support, he only got 1 support for his main job, which doesn't happen terribly often, but okay. Looking at counters, he got 3 different counters. One that I think is probably the only one that you're really going to consider, but there could be a case made for one of them as well. So let's take a look at what else he got. So, Pugilist, what are we getting from this sub-job? Is it worth running here? Because you're essentially taking strike type damage, which, I mean, we got some HP restore, we got some defense up, and we got some extra damage for taking a bunch of hits, which is something that you think Squall should be good at. And taking a look at the Pugilist here, I don't know, feels really quite so-so to me. Taking a look at Trick Lancer. Now, an increase of attack buff and critical rate does actually seem pretty interesting. Piercing damage is generally pretty good for being reliable against certain defensive enemies. Decreased critical evasion is good for buffing up Squall's chances of getting critical hits. More piercing damage with AP decrease is valuable, and yeah, again, works back into just critical hits. So if there was a sub job I did like, it's Trick Lancer. It's definitely Trick Lancer. What you're giving up is essentially a move to unit panel, which is kind of sucky because you're essentially getting a CT decrease for your opponent while also restoring a bunch for yourself, potentially getting another turn faster. And that could be game-changing in certain opinions, or certain states. He also has a big AoE if he can get generally close here with a 165 mod, but I'm not overly excited about either of these abilities. Still, limiting his kit and potentially closing the gap could be more valuable than what Trick Lancer is providing, but coming back to that in a little bit. So taking a look here, main kit. Limit Burst, first of all, is a 200%. Auto Restore 10%. Basically bells on a limit burst. And a quad hit too. Now, things I like about this, it is single target. It is 4 hits. It does get cheaper once you get into his 140. And we're also looking at a, just again, bells directly on an attacking ability. In terms of chaining, I think this will be really good for a lot of different stuff. I think it could be potentially powerful. Keep in mind that could for a second. And granting, I mean, just essentially having a freed up bell spot is kind of nice. So the rest of his main kit, we have basically a 121 hit with some good range on it that restores AP, 10 for himself when he gets a critical hit. But if he kills an opponent with it, he also restores a little bit of extra AP. So nice. Second ability, slash resistance and strike resistance 25% piece, as well as the honeycomb barrier. People who don't know how this works, essentially from panels 4 to 7, it will decrease the amount of damage as you get further away. So, you know, panel 4 is the smallest defense or smallest kind of protective barrier, up to panel 7, which is the highest one. Now the percentages I think have been worked out from basically, I think it's like 10% up to 40%. And the general thing here is not necessarily damage decrease, although it can be a bonus. The thing that you're really looking from the honeycomb effect is to push enemy AI closer to your units faster, since the AI works on trying to figure out how to do the most damage. It will try and move closer, which does essentially allow Cloud or Squall or whoever is partnered with this unit to get in potentially really close to an opponent and really lay down. So that's the benefit that you're looking at. We also have a few other effects. Looking at his job level 25, we're getting 100% advanced defense penetration of 50 for himself, a 200% mod, dispel, protect. There is no casting time on blasting zone 2, which I like. His large AoE can decrease slash resistance by 38%, which is pretty high. 165 mod, decrease healing power, and decrease defense penetration. Both of these things are essentially to prevent the enemy from healing and from dealing too much damage to you, which, if you think about his TMR, doesn't quite work in the way that you would potentially want it, but okay. And an increaser for defense and slash attack for allies, so Squall is good on a slashing type team. They can also give a pretty good defense buff and protect for himself with restoring 8. So you look at Squall here, and the big takeaways from his kit are that he's a fairly defensive character that has some good options of manipulating enemy AI, messing with some resistances, and dealing some damage. That's essentially the type of character that you're. With that being said, Squall is missing quite a few things. And this is the thing where this is the complaint section. Because Squall doesn't have a lot of things that you would see in an attacker. He doesn't have barrier removal, really. I mean, short of just multi-hitting a target and breaking the barrier that way. He doesn't have guts removal. He doesn't have re-raise removal. He does have a protect removal on one of these, but other than that, you're essentially just what you see is what you get. And here, like, you look at this and he has a tough time accessing defense penetration naturally. He has a tough time getting the slash resistance without his opponents being kind of close to it. It's not necessarily a bad thing because he can put up a good amount of defense, but initial tests off of the friend unit, and this is where Squall gets an award, because in all honesty, Squall is probably the worst friend unit I've seen in the game, probably ever. The friend unit that they have set up, it doesn't appear from the outside like there would be anything necessarily wrong, but even in Teachin and my tests against water elemental teams, Squall's DPS is so low off of the friend unit that I couldn't help wondering if something was just broken or wrong or way too AI dependent to be incredibly reliable. And to that point, I'm just not doing a showcase yet because A, my friend unit hasn't refreshed from last night's stream, but secondly, I want to develop my own copy of the unit to see if that makes a difference into actually like getting just better results. If it really is equipment and Esper and vision card related, then that is something that we can potentially fix and give a much better way, because as of right now, everything that I've seen from the friend unit is so bad, I don't even want to showcase it on this, and that's just not good. And so at the end of this, kind of like, I guess we should talk just really quickly about counters to finish it up. Overall, I feel like it's his primary counter because it just makes you good against Slash and Strike, reducing the amount of damage, which kind of works to Squall's general thing that he wants to do. He's pretty good against Slash, he's pretty good against Strike. That's where he's. Now, taking a look here at his supports, I think you almost always want this because you want Slash attack, resistance, penetration all the time to up his offense. You're getting defense and AoE resistance, so this is basically Squall's theme. And from there, it's kind of a question of do you want accuracy, do you want HP and attack, or do you want critical rate and defense penetration? I feel like these two are probably the ones that you are going to settle on. There isn't too terribly much. And Squall, like, defensive-wise, I guess, just doesn't have the hatred, he doesn't have re-raise, he doesn't have guts, so all of these things he's kind of missing, you kind of have to find sources for. And given that he is on, just for JP, what is one of the strongest elements, with potentially being partnered up with Bridal Alaya, who's one of the strongest characters, it really does make you wonder if they were just really scared about making Squall too good and pulled a little bit back on it. Again, my own testing with the unit will probably reveal more in the upcoming days of whether this unit is just forked or is actually secretly really good or might just be absolutely middle of the road. You look at his kit and there isn't anything inherently wrong with it, and you can see the benefits that he would bring. And just being partnered with one of the strongest characters right now in Wotv, you gotta ask yourself, does he really need to be insanely much better? Like, maybe you just slap some hate on this guy, go more defensive, or maybe you just put him on offensive and say, deal with it. I don't quite know yet how I feel about him, but he's still kind of interesting. I'm going to hold off too much judgment and do a better showcase in a separate video, but hopefully you can kind of get why I'm conflicted on this. I mean, Thunder is just a top tier element right now, and Squall will generally be strong enough to probably push it even further. But he doesn't feel as kind of exciting as some of the other units have been lately. So yeah, Squall at the end. Boy, I talked a lot, and I feel so conflicted on it. This unit is definitely, I think, at the end of this, just going to end up in one of two cases. Either his DPS just isn't good enough and he is total trash, or he's just really good and the friend unit is in fact what I thought, which is one of the worst we've ever seen set up. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Is this just the worst unit ever? Or do you think that there actually is something there? Create a little decisiveness, since Global doesn't have Bridal Alaya yet, and we don't know what that's actually going to look like when that's all said and done. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. See you next time.